live on YouTube anyway, at least. Am I live on Instagram? We'll check there now in a second. Bum, bum, bum. Let's go over Instagram live video. Why does Instagram have to always be so sulky? I have no clue if that's the same code or not. Dun, dun. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. No? No, okay, Roger. Bum bum. How are you keeping? Oh, nice. I think that's not a bad view for the Twitch side of things. How's Jim O'Neill tonight? I missed you earlier on. And did that not work? I literally have no clue what's going on. Do you know what? We'll just leave. We'll leave Instagram the way she is. she's a picky one, I tell you that, Jim. Oh my god. We'll press the old continue button there. I might pop over and get myself a drink in a bit. Is this true? It's a 10-second delay between up above what I see over here on the screen. But it still gives you a fair idea anyway of the mad stuff I'm getting up to. Did you guys can you all hear me fine, or is the sound gone terrible? The sound is probably absolutely diabolical.
Didn't the abbot see?
Don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? Bum, bum, bum. Ah, it is. It's a great game. All right. In a second. Oh, Jesus. I pushed all the way. I pause button there. I'm going along well. How's Philip? Grand, actually. I thought I'd be feeling a bit more exhausted after the 2 hours. Because sometimes I do the 2 hours and afterwards I have to lie down in bed for a wee bit. But it seemed grand tonight, to be honest with you. Well, grand today, anyway. I know it's tonight for you guys. I thought Owen O'Neill was Jim earlier, but now I know because Jim is Jim, both got long hair. And they're quite sharp in the old Irish history, I'll tell you that. So, and also there's another academic called Jim O'Neill as well. So I often get confused between Jim O'Neill, who's in the comment section right now, and Dr. Jim O'Neill, who wrote the book on the 9 Years' War. You know, the neuro one. Cheers, thanks for that, Caveman. But yeah, I was I put on the old game there and I run around. I want to try to get myself some Titanic armor tonight. Hopefully, anyway, we'll see. Great videos with the lads. Yeah, it was good. It was a really, really good chat. I think it's one of the best chats we've had, to be honest with you, on the identification of the Anglo-Irish in the 15th century. I put up as a short just there about what Michal was saying earlier about the protest that the Bergs had against the what was it? It's meant to be the Irish Parliament, but it was pretty much the English Parliament at the time. And the way they took off they got naked in front of the English garrison and wiggled their butt around in front of them before putting on their Irish clothing again. Jeez, this is what I'm after. Probably a better version of that, but I love the Teutonic Order. They're absolutely class. I'll have to look for that book in the library. Are you talking about the one on the English invasion? Or are you talking about what's the other one? Oh, yeah. Sean Duffy's new book that's coming out next year on the... Okay, I have to go over here. Did I miss out on something? Probably going to get given it. Oh, talk to himself here. Okay. Or Sean Duffy, he's coming up with a book next year on the invasions 1169, where he's going to elaborate on the definition of the Normans, which is really important politically because we have a lot of Irish nationalists um, feel very uncomfortable when it comes down to the topic of the Norman invasion of Ireland. So it's definitely something we have to discuss and talk about, which is great for the likes of myself because I love talking about Norman history. But at the same time, there's some people that don't want to accept any grants from France when it comes down to celebrating Norman history because there's so many Irish people that feel uncomfortable about celebrating the Norman identity in Ireland, which is funny because it's just French identity. We have no problems with the French themselves, you know? Really? I've never heard of that order, to be quite honest with you. It's the first time I actually heard about them. I'll have to look them up. And I assume are they based around the whole Bohemia, Lithuania, and Prussian area? Are they? Well, this was East Germany, isn't it? Oh, I'll stretch out a wee bit. Yes. Oh, stuck. That's some delay up above. I wonder if that's broke. No, it's just very slow. I wonder if I press this, will I update? That's much better. As that happens. There is. I'll just pop that in there so I can poke away at that one when I'm doing this one. There's an O'Brien that became. Oh, that's interesting. I'm pretty sure he lives in Poland, but his ancestors lived in Belarus, and I believe he fought for the Russians long ago. Is it truly wild to see? Oh, that's interesting. When did that all happen? Was that around the 1800s? No, based in right, based in Europe. They were defenders of lepers, and when they got leprosy, you could join the order. Ah, that's an interesting one. Hmm. Bum, 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 bum. I can hear him in the background talking about the politics of the fighting between Lithuania and Poland against the Teutonic Order, which is very exciting at the time. To be honest with you, it ends up having a huge, massive battle between the Lithuanian Poland Commonwealth and the Prussians. Just nearly got out there. Bum, bum, bum. They found a Polish. Oh, that's interesting. Am I on mute? Can you not hear me now? No? Can you hear me now? Something like that. I'll have to look again. If you Google on the name tree, even comes up, he matched with But I wonder when he went over, to be honest with you. That's fascinating. I have settings there. 1 second. I'll have to look at the old settings. Testing. No, it isn't working here. Don't know. Please follow me. I'm a Mario. Let's give us a second there. I'm just going to see if I can get this up and going again on the old Instagram. Bum, 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 bum. I'm going to have to delete a load of shite. The Ibrahim or Burns might be one of the largest Irish families with the white DNA testing. Interesting. Oh, really? But how could they claim that they were the largest? Isn't that quite funny? I think I finally got it working on the old Instagram. Yeah, I did. I pressed the old go live on Instagram. Oh shit, did I mess up? Just walked along. Sick of me, didn't I? Why here? Hardenreich. Off we go around the church. He was talking about wars earlier. I wonder if he was talking about the Lithuanian Polish Commonwealth war against the Teutonic Order, or if he was talking about the civil fighting inside of the Holy Roman Empire. Ah. Hmm. I don't know. I'd have to look more into it, to be honest with you. When it comes down to the complication of DNA in Scotland, it is very, very complicated because of the continuous Scandinavian Gaelic and kind of Britannic Anglo-Saxon mix that's happening. Oh, and of course the French mix that gets mixed in there as well in the lowlands. So even trying to decode Scottish DNA can be quite difficult at times for many people that specialize in the area. I thought I knew a little bit of Scottish DNA, well, Scottish history, until I got talking to Hamish. And wow, like a small area run by a clan can be quite complicated when it comes down to its heritage. On first glance, many people assume that many clans in Scotland are of Celtic background and of Celtic DNA. And that's not the situation whatsoever, you know? Mm. Yeah, the study of DNA in Scotland is an interesting one, all right. McDonald's. Would you say that they're Viking? I always seen them as kind of that kind of Norse Gael mix for sure. Um, because the thing about the McDonald's is they make so much money continuously from the early medieval period to the late medieval period as mercenaries going between the obviously in the early medieval period and the high middle ages going between the Scottish Norwegian world. No, not so much the Scottish, sorry, the Gaelic, and you could even say Pictish, the Pictish Gaelic and Norwegian world. And then as we go into the late medieval period, you know, that transformation from the high middle ages with the Scottish Norwegian War, and then going into late medieval period, because they're living in the islands between Scotland and Ireland, and they modernize their military into a mercenary company, you know, they make an absolute fortune from all that kind of stuff, you know. But insanely interesting clan, even going up to the plantation of Ireland and stuff. You know, they're one of the main pushers of a lot of stuff. You know, definitely the main players in a lot of stuff that's going on. My grandfather is part of the clan MacDonald. Oh, nice. That's definitely well interesting. Like the Picts. The Picts were first. Yeah, that's our modern interpretation for sure. But then we'll go off and we'll find a caveman body from the Neolithic or megalithic period, and we'll test his DNA and find out he's from somewhere completely, and it'll end up completely rewriting our history. It's the constant thing that's going on right now, especially right now when we dig up much more earlier bodies, especially if they're frozen in ice or they have fallen into a bog, so they're perfectly preserved. We dig them up, do a DNA test on them, and it tells us a completely new story. It's always exciting in that perspective. But yeah, you're completely right, Michael, that as of right now, it's a fact that the pigs were the first one. That's the factual evidence right now. Dun, dun, dun. Right. Still a ton of spots I need to explore and look at. Open up. Yeah, the McDonald's. Oh, I can't just hop over there. Yeah, the McDonald's were definitely. 1 second, I'll pop that in there. Yeah, the McDonald's were definitely Norse Gael. We know Summerland to claim Gaelic identity. Many Norse quickly adopted Gaelic culture. Yeah, especially after the Scottish Norwegian War. Even the McSweeney's, and the McSweeney's are so funny because the McSweeney's were originally a Gaelic family in Scotland, and you would assume naturally they would take the side of Edinburgh against the Norwegians during the Scottish Norwegian War around 1250. And instead, the McSweeney's joined the side of the Norwegians, which, at first glance, especially looking at DNA wise and ethnic wise, it really shows there's no form of nationality. There's no form of, I'm going to go fight for my country. No, 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 no. The McSweeney's, a Gaelic family, joined the Norwegians during the Scottish Norwegian War, and end up getting the boot out there, But they switch from a kind of Scottish Gaelic culture to a Irish Gaelic culture and hop on over to Ireland as the Gallo Glass, the old Gallo Glass, and then they start branching into their many Irish and Scottish branches all over the place. And thank you. God be with you too. Bum, bum, bum. I found it fascinating that the haplogroup H was found in some of the oldest bodies in Ireland, basically absent in Ireland in general. I'd have to look deeper into that one, to be quite honest with you. When it comes down to the old study of DNA. Oh, that's the armor I'm after for sure. Look at that armor. That is absolutely gorgeous. Can I take a photo? Settings. Photo mode. Look how gorgeous that armor is. That's the one for sure I was after. What's very interesting is that we can see, this needs to catch up a wee bit. Yeah, maybe I should just, 1 second. What I'll do is I'll, yeah, there we go. Let's catch it up again. But if we look at this here, we can see, can I toggle that? No, that's not it. There we go. So if we look here at the riveted mail, that's not chainmail we're looking at. We're looking at riveted mail underneath the coat of arms. Well, not coat of arms, the coat he has here, the surcoat he has here. And on top of that, at the very edges of it, he's got brass, which is very, very interesting because you can see the same thing with the Gallo Glass riveted mail. So this riveted mail is so similar to the style that we can see in Ireland, where we have all those rivets. And then at the very edges, we have this kind of V shape at the end of the riveted mail. And we have brass at the end of it, bronze brass, to show off status, that this person is of a high status. And we see the very same thing in Ireland with the Gallo Glass. And you can see that again up at the collar here. Same thing again, leather around the neck, as we can see the same thing in Ireland with the Gallo Glass. And then the bronze V shapes that we can see here at the very the triangle shapes with the brasses at the very end. That's absolutely fascinating. Do you know? Sorry for ignoring the comments there. I'll just pop into this one here. I have an uncle, Sam Sweeney. He has lots of gun. I was talking about that yesterday. I had a short, and it was talking about. It was just joking that I couldn't tell the difference between Texas cowboy warfare and Irish medieval warfare, and how in the late medieval period, Renaissance, there's just guns everywhere in Ireland, and it's the same thing over in Texas as well. So it's funny that you put that in there, like. But I have an uncle, Sam Sweeney. That's some name as well, Sam Sweeney. What an amazing name to have. He has lots of guns. Always love saying Uncle Sam has lots of guns. I bet you did. Like, what a comment. Like, and then McSweeney joining makes sense because of the lowlands. We're Saxon, Brittany, Gael mixture, but mostly Saxon and Briton. And cultural difference to the Highlands. One spoke Gaelic and the other spoke Lowland Scots. Yeah, I find it's complicated to have a conversation with people who specialize in Scottish medieval history, like Hamish. I want to try to get Hamish back on because he specializes in early medieval Scotland, and wow, his clothing reenactment and everything is absolutely magnificent. I get on with Hamish so well, to be quite honest with you. But I'll try to get Hamish on. But anytime I try to have a conversation with him, the amount of information he has and the level of detail he goes into, so much of it goes past my head because he has such an amazing standard of understanding. Is that tartan behind his? No, it's not. Okay, it's just the way the red is. The red is and with the dark. It's an absolute gorgeous gammonson he has there. The gammonson in between the gaps of his armor. I don't know if you guys can see that one. Let me see. Can we see that? No, we're not. We're not going to see that today. But yeah, that gambitson's absolutely gorgeous. I could literally stare at this all day. It's absolutely gorgeous. Interesting how he has leather shoes at the bottom. He's not there with his steel caps. Interesting. Sword is absolutely gorgeous as well. I don't specialize in late medieval armor, to be quite honest with you, but I need to really pick up and learn. I've had plenty of specialists on to have various discussions with me, and I need to bring in more for more deeper dives into these type of conversations because, especially in Ireland, we were talking about and discussing earlier about the development of castles in the southeast of the island of Ireland and how the castles are made more for conventional style warfare rather than what we see in the northwest of the island of Ireland when looking at castles that specialize more in cattle, right? Well, the defense of cattle, really. You know, we still argue if we can get cattle inside of the tower houses, especially ones that we claim can be defense for cattle. But then in the southeast of the island, where we have more of an Anglo-Irish influence coming onto the island, we have castles that are made for good old-fashioned, old-school, classic siege warfare. You know, castles like Kilkenny Castle for sure. Kerr Castle being an absolutely amazing castle because Kerr Castle has so many examples from the Middle East. Bray Castle, which is a Gaelic castle made for proper siege warfare. We see the same thing in Blarney Castle as well, another brilliant siege castle. You know, absolutely amazing stuff. And they're Gaelic castles made by Gaelic chieftains, you know, so any people that believe that all these castles are made by the English are completely wrong. I'm recently doing reenactments and I'm smithing my own gear. I agree, great armor. Ooh, man, I have to see your work. Do I have you added on Instagram and stuff? The graphics are absolutely amazing in this game as well. I want his hat though. His hat looks absolutely amazing. I'll probably just steal out of his kit and just run around as him. There's nothing wrong with his kit whatsoever. It's absolutely magnificent. His character's put together so well. Get some photos in of that one. Look how gorgeous this is. Let me see if there's any conversation over on Instagram. No, once again, no one's following me. No love on Instagram. It's a funny one going live over there, I found. Maybe other people have better success, but I don't know. I find Instagram is very funny, to be quite honest with you. He was guarding this room and there's nothing in here from what I can say. I wonder if your man's downstairs or something. Oh no, he's way over in the other building. Sure, I'm way off. This monastery is gorgeous, by the way. Bum, bum. Enniskillen Castle, built on an island. It was built by Hugh Maguire, a Gaelic lord. That was class. Do you know what? Give us a second there. I actually want to look at that castle. If you guys don't mind me jumping over for a second. There's only 3 of us anyway, so it's grand. Boom, boom. I actually want to have a look at Enniskillen Castle as well. I've heard so much about it, but never actually had a proper look at it, to be quite honest with you. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. But I'm assuming the castle that's there today is like a Jacobite. Ooh, it controls, doesn't it? Because that's the access right into Northern Ireland, isn't it? Modern day Northern Ireland, into Ulster. It's another choke point like Sligo is. Sligo is a choke point. And that Enniskillen Castle, wow, that is some choke point for sure. Bum, 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 bum. Let me see. It really, like that castle, you can tell straight away it's there to control that choke point of a river. I'll send it over here. Boom, 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 boom. Hopefully this pops up right. Images. Like, yeah, look at that. Like, that's the river from the Connacht side. So the men of Connacht marching into Ulster. That's what they'd see straight away. Like that gives a definite, a defining image. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what you have to fight through. Do you know? Especially from the old O'Connors and the likes of that. I'll pop over there and have an old look. Yeah, I knew it'd be 16th century or something like that. Yeah, and it's a proper 16. Yeah, it starts to get built up. But its foundation start in 1428. So that's during the 100 Years' War. It's interesting because that's when most of these castles get erected, is during the, what's it called? 100 Years' War. You see a lot of foundations of these magnificent castles. But Ireland is going into, it's interesting because at the time, Ireland is going into a, what's it called? Economic golden age. Well, it was trying to. And then the Scots, was it the Scots? I think it's the Scots. The Scots end up beating the O'Donnells. So Ireland is about to go into an economic golden age going into the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. And it's only recently that we've started to delve deeper into this. But I'm sure what happens is the Scots end up beating the O'Donnells. So that golden age, economic golden age, never really lifts off in the 15th century, which is just, like dire consequences later on for sure, especially later on and stuff. But yeah, I wonder how much of this was originally like this going into the 15th century, 1428. The Maguires were under the O'Donnells, weren't they, as well? Especially going into the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. Yeah, so this would have been like the 100 Years' War. And it was constructed during the Butler-Talbot feud. The Butlers at the time were allied to the O'Donnells. So they were probably expecting, and it's hilarious because the Butlers and the Fitzgeralds claim they were still very much loyal to the English crown because technically speaking, they weren't at war with Henry VI, who was la in the head. He wasn't all there. But at the same time, they were at war with Talbot, who was in control of the English military and also running the English administration at the time because Henry VI, he went between being a child that wasn't fit to rule England to then being mentally unstable, which, meant he could, continue to not run England to its standard. And so the Butlers and the Fitzgeralds wanted to run the Irish Parliament the way they wanted to run the Irish Parliament. And so what happened is that a war kicked off between Talbot. So in a way, the Irish, and it's always ignored, that the fact that the Irish were heavily a part of the 100 Years' War with the Butler-Talbot feud. People don't look into it enough. So it's very interesting that this castle was constructed during the Talbot Butler feud. What was that? One of the reasons why it was constructed was a defense if there was another English invasion, because the Irish had only just beaten an English invasion in around was it 13? What was the first one? Richard II. Give us a second. I'll quickly look up Richard II in Ireland. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, so 1394 to 1399 is Richard II's invasion of Ireland, which ends up getting repelled in 1399, where the Gaelic Irish, led by Art MacMore Cavanagh, beats the English, which we hardly even talk about. But it's very interesting because it does give this feel that at any moment the English could invade again. And I reckon that the Anglo-Irish must have felt very uncomfortable at that point, especially when previously, the English had been trying their best, especially with the likes of Lionel of Antwerp, who was Edward III's son, had been trying to enforce the Statutes of Kilkenny against the Anglo-Irish to stop them from celebrating their Irish culture inside of Ireland. So that fear for them must have been there of another English invasion. So it could explain why you have all these castles being suddenly constructed left, right, and centre all over Ireland at the time. It's funny because I got into an argument with someone yesterday that was trying to really highlight the fact that the Irish were, backwards and barbarous and couldn't build any of these Norman castles. And it's such a fake lie that's all over the place that's part of this 800 years of British propaganda, because the majority of castles that are inside of the island of Ireland today were actually built by the Gaelic. And some of these castles, like Leap Castle, for example, was attacked during the 1916, the Irish Civil War. There were some Gaelic castles burnt down and destroyed. Is it Muskerry Castle in West Cork was burnt down? It was McCarthy Castle, believe it or not, and was burnt down by the IRA because they thought it was an English Norman castle. That's like, I understand, don't get me wrong, I do understand when somebody says 800 years of British occupation. I understand where the feeling comes from, but sometimes this misinformation can be quite dangerous, especially the way people who are very ignorant can have a conversation. I kind of waffled for a wee bit there, so I want to pop in there. They do tourism recently, however, Irish language classes there. I'm living in Sligo. Nice. McCoon's Castle and Belly Isles is controlled trade between Enniskillen Castle and Maguire's. Should give a look. I should. Bishop Castle is so awesome. It's absolutely magnificent. Like, I wonder if I type in, can I find that castle again? Because oh yeah, there we go. Can I have? I just want to see how did it originally look like in the 15th century during the period of the 100 Years' War. 15th century, perhaps? Art. Is that honestly how it looked? Oh, yeah, and then they've got the additions. But that thing still dominates in the... I have the picture here, by the way. And when did the I'm just wondering when did, because that reinforcement started off as a tower house and then turned into, so what we're looking at here, that wall originally started off as a tower house. I found the photo here. I'll have a gawk here. Bum, bum, bum. Images. And then, yeah, there we go. Oof. Yeah, there it is. That's the original one there. That's absolutely gorgeous. So that's how Enniskillen looked like during the 15th century. And that, so there's two tower houses in there. And the small tower house that we could see here is a part of the gatehouse. So that's transformed into this, going into the William Knight and Jacobite Wars. Got transformed into this. As you said there, to control the trade going into. You can see the trade right there, going inside of the settlement. Absolutely gorgeous. And I found another one that shows the transformation going into the William Knight and Jacobite Wars. Bum, 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 bum. I'll show you guys there actually. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. Poof, look at that. So that's how it looked during the William Knight and Jacobite Wars. And you can see how the Tower House got turned into this. And then at the back, let me see, they put extensions on. So they built it out. And they tore, it looks like they took down the keep. The main keep itself, the main castle itself, the main keep. And then built the barracks to the side there. And there seems to be definitely a fortified barracks, which is typical of from the Cromwellian Wars up to, well, the War of the Three Kingdoms and stuff. So the Cromwellian Wars up to the William and Jacobite Wars, having fortified houses is definitely the way forward there. But absolutely gorgeous, like, to be honest with you. That's class. You can see some of it, how it built out and stuff. Some of that medieval ideas and stuff. But yeah, class stuff. Like, pop back over here. Is it here? I am. No, it's here. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Right. So, Neil, is that also the same one from the William Knight and Jacobite Wars as well? Is it the one just before the Battle of the Boyne? Irish Trinity and Brehon law were different from European feudalism. Yeah, but there seems to be a blur as well in the southeast of the island of Ireland. So, in the very start, in the early medieval period, you have it exactly the way it ought to be, the Brehon laws. But then as we enter into high Middle Ages, there's a lot of growing pains when it comes down to the implying the Brehon law and stuff in the island of Ireland. The biggest problem as well is that the Normans, they're really trying to find their feet inside of Ireland. Like, they do their best in the 13th century to apply English common law, which surprisingly enough does work under Henry III. The problem is the moment that 100 Years' War, well, even going into the Scottish War of Independence with Edward I, is that Edward I and then every bloody Edward after that just sees Ireland as a occupied territory for them to suck the resources out of. And so the lordship of Ireland, the territories under the Commonwealth, just starts to collapse, which is typical. The problem is with the British government, a lot of members of the British Parliament and the government, is they always just see Ireland as an area where they can just keep sucking resources out, which causes massive problems. And it's so funny because afterwards, then they'll turn around and say, oh, why can't the Irish just be English? And it's like, well, to start with, can you please treat us as a human being? That would be nice. Thumbs up there, like. Because, and it's funny because Henry III proves that statement must exist because of the fact that during the 13th century, his territories did function and work, up until Edward I takes over. And then it just starts to, the Burg territories, the Burgs are coming into so many problems they shouldn't have had. And then eventually breaks into complete civil war, which would have never happened if half of the garbage that was happening was happening. And of course, it didn't help that, a mini ice age kicked off. And so from there, it's easy to have the Gaelic resurgence in Ireland and even have Anglo, Norman lords start behaving more Irish than the Irish themselves, Ba, 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 ba. Just pop up with that one as well. Yes, I was trying to say this as well. Is that okay? So there's one problem. I do believe. Don't get me wrong. Right before I even start Caveman, I do believe that the Irish were building Moat and Bailey castles before the arrival of the Normans into Ireland. Why? Because we were building way more advanced stuff in Ireland before the arrival of the Normans. Take the Rock of Cashel, for example, in Cormac's Chapel. The architecture inside there is far more advanced than anything we'd see in what was it called? Ireland of the 12th century. Like Cormac's Chapel, if you look at the archway and everything that's in there, that's far more complicated. Like I know, it's a door and everything, but the construction of that door without collapsing, with the big heavy stone inside there, and on top of that, the sculptures that are inside that door are far more complicated than somebody building a fortification that you already see in Ireland, then building a hill on top of it. And then building a wooden keep. That it's so simple to construct. So anytime somebody goes on about this argument that the Irish were living in backwards ring forts with the arrival of the Normans, it's complete and utter garbage. Even more so when you look at the likes of the Rock of Cashel and other monastic settlements inside of Ireland, where they are bringing in German architects to build absolutely exquisite architecture of the 11th and 12th century. So, yeah, I fully agree with you. That Moat and Bailey Castle wouldn't have been that difficult. Furthermore, it's not even like the Irish were disconnected. There's so much movement between Dublin, Waterford, and Normandy. And also on top of that, you have so much movement between various Gaelic chieftains. So even if the Gaelic in areas like Connacht, which by the way they do believe that they were building Moat and Bailey castles, even if you don't believe they were building Moat and Bailey castles, why can't the Hyperno-Scandinavians be building Moat and Bailey castles when they see Moat and Bailey castles in Normandy all the time when they're trading in that area? So I definitely do believe that they were building Moat and Bailey castles. The only problem we face today is, first off, the language is funny because the Irish keep using cashel left, right, and centre, which means castle. And the second big problem we're facing is the lack of archaeological evidence. So we just need to find a pre-Norman Moat and Bailey castle, which you would think would be quite easy, but it's actually been quite a nuisance. But hopefully more work gets done archaeological wise, so we can finally get that nailed in the head and say, yes, there were Moat and Bailey castles before the arrival of the Normans. The McGregors were independent from the O'Donnells. They played the O'Neills and O'Donnells against each other, challenging alliances. I have to look into that one, the McGregors, because I think overall they were still on, when it comes down to 100 Years' War, yeah, because we're not dealing with any massive major wars, especially against the English or something. But I do want to look at that from the perspective of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, when you're dealing with the Fitzgeralds on the side of the Yorkists and the continuous fear of an English invasion, even more so after the decapitation of Desmond Fitzgerald. And the Butlers, who are sided on the side of the Lancastrians. And they do, from time to time, they do actually invade into Ireland with an English force, completely foreign to the Gaelic, So the constant fear, which by the way, the Gaelic, the Fitzgeralds, the Gaelic led by the Fitzgeralds, do actually push back and beat. And then they have the famous, both the famous Siege of Waterford, where you see cannons being used way before the 16th century. And you also see the Battle of Piltown as well, where you see an English military force led by the Butlers being beaten by a Gaelic force led by the Fitzgeralds, Bam, bam, bam. So I'd be interested to see where the Maguires were in, because it seems to me that when it comes down to the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, some way, shape, or form, everybody was invested into that one. It wasn't a case of, the Maguires just doing their own thing at the side, especially given the location. It's one thing to hop between the O'Donnells and the O'Neills, but they were definitely somewhere. But what's interesting about the Wars of the Roses in Ireland as well is that the O'Donnells and the O'Neills were very much linked together. It was led by Hugh O'Donnell, and for a good chunk of time, Ulster, it's not until the end of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland that we see the Clans Wars in Ireland, just before the Tudor conquest of Ireland. And that's where we see the O'Neills finally defeating the O'Donnells and becoming the dominant force in Ulster. But during the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, the O'Donnells and the O'Neills are very close against the likes of the Butlers and stuff. I think they spend a good chunk of the time trying to suppress, what was it called? Like the Carrickfergus and stuff, and then supporting the Fitzgeralds against the Butlers. And then there was obviously all those invasions as well into England on the side of the Yorkists. Fascinating period, the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. It was a war fought between the Fitzgeralds and the Butlers over the title of Lord Deputy of Ireland, basically in control of the Irish Parliament. Because we as an Irish society, that's where we get our foundation of our republicanism today, is from the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, which is interesting because you see the same thing happening in France, Italy, not so much Italy because it's still very fractured, but Florence argues that's where its foundation of its society comes from today. Spain gets unified under the Castile, so there's a lot of countries starting to get their foundation of their nationality in the 15th century. And Ireland is no different going into the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, with the Fitzgeralds pushing and fighting to take control of the Irish Parliament as Lord Deputy. And even the whole ideas of assemblies and voting for clan chieftain and stuff, it's absolutely amazing that this is where we get our foundation of our Republican culture that we have today. And I remember people saying when the movie Gangs of New York came out that those ideas of clan warfare from the 15th century would eventually make their way over to America and even shape American politics today. Obviously that's outside of my field of expertise, so I couldn't really go into a deep conversation about that right now. But yeah, fascinating nonetheless. Oh yes, you're talking about the what was it called? Oh, my brain. You're talking about in what was his name again? First off, you have the Tudor conquest of Ireland, where Henry VIII was trying to destroy as much Gaelic culture as possible because he was trying to turn the Irish English. So loads of our medieval history was destroyed. Cashel was burnt down, and loads of records. This is why Munster is missing its Annals of Munster, because the English burned it in around 1536 and stuff. So we have a load of annals and stuff missing and destroyed. We're also missing the Brian Bruce saga and the Dublin saga, which is highlighted in literature, but it's missing. So most likely the Tudors probably destroyed it there, perhaps. Then we go up to Cromwell, who also burned a whole load of literature as well, destroyed a lot of stuff in Ireland. And then, just as we were collecting it all, so we collected all of it to try to keep safe what was left over. We then had the Irish Civil War, where the Siege of the Four Courts happened, where all of the Irish medieval documentation was held. And during the siege, it was burned. It was a cannon had fired too far into the building, which caused the fire inside of where all the documentation was kept. So it went up on fire. And if you go online to the Siege of the Four Courts on YouTube, if you watch the video, you can see snow. And that's not snow. It's medieval literature burning, all the paper burning and coming down as ash into the ground. Absolutely depressing stuff. That's an interesting fact, all right. Some tribute, oh, some tribes and Leinster didn't have to pay tribute. Boom, boom, boom. Are you talking about the old Tuat, or are you talking about the Bronze Age Ireland? Da-da-da. That's an interesting fact as well. Like, Burn law was far superior to the English law. There were more justice in it. When Northern Lords wanted, they would switch between the systems. They did, didn't they? As I was saying there, going into late medieval period, even the butlers themselves had taken on Brehon law, you know? So it really is like when I'm using the term Anglo-Irish going into a conversation after the going into the Hundred Years' War, you could really apply the term Anglo-Irish because they really are people living between both the Gaelic world and the English world. How when it came to day-to-day business, they were Gaelic. As the saying goes, they were more Irish than the Irish themselves. But the moment, like a flick of the switch, the moment they had to go to English Parliament, they were straight to being English again. But as Mihal was saying a few hours earlier, it doesn't mean they were all happy about it, all these Anglo-Irish lords, because you can see that with the Burghs, how in a form of protest ran up to the River Shannon, then stripped off their clothes in front of Shannon garrison, the English garrison, and then put on their Irish clothes again as a form of protest against the English Parliament, inside of Ireland. When did all the forests disappear? The forests all started to disappear in the, how do we say? Around the 19th and 20th century is when a lot of forestry is cut down for the British boats. A lot of forestry is cut down to make up for the British boats because the British were looking to take over the world. And then they took all our food as well. So we ended up starving to death with the Great Famine, which for years the British were making propaganda that it was a potato famine, when in reality they had just stolen all of our food and cut down all of our trees for their British Empire. And then they wonder why we can't be English. Still wondering today, why can we not just be English? You should read The Towers of the Templars of Ancient Ireland for a detailed study of the architecture. Ooh, let me have a quick gawk on that one. We'll go back over here. The Towers of... Oh, sorry, the Towers... Ugh. My brain is doubled. The Towers and Templars. Oh, there it is. She knows what you're talking about. That book, even before we start, is absolutely gorgeous, but it's expensive. I do not have the money for that book right now. I want that book already, though. By the price tag, somebody knows that that's worth a lot of money. It's about $70, but absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, that's an absolute gorgeous book. Let's have a wee gawk. There's no pictures online about it, is there? Just having a quick gawk around. Yeah, it's on Amazon for about $73. There's a Kindle edition, but my Kindle is acting up so much. Okay. That came out in December 2005, and there is a Kindle edition for only £3 as well. You can go from Enniskillen to Limerick by boat. The Irish are definitely not cut off from Europe like how England has betrayed us. Yeah, it's definitely a form of what was it called? Us being subhuman, which makes absolutely no sense. There's more work being done into 15th century Ireland because of the fact that our trade between Iceland, going between Iceland to the Iberian Peninsula, because if you look at Rachel's recent work into clothing in Gaelic Ireland in the 15th century, there is so much Icelandic influences into Gaelic clothing. It's wild. And then as we approach the later stages of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, there is so much Iberian, Spanish influence into our clothing. That's the whole saffron, the long lenas, all an Iberian influence, you know? So 100% not cut off. Hugely influenced Scotland, Iceland, and the Iberian Peninsula. Huge influences onto the Gaelic culture, you know. So you're bang on right, not cut off one bit. But they're arguing right now that there was fighting between the O'Donnells and the Scots in the 15th century. I can't remember if it's during the period of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. I have it somewhere. I have to go back over it again. But the O'Donnells are beaten by the Scots. I think it was Hugh O'Donnell or something was beaten by the Scots, and it pretty much brought an end to Ireland pushing up into another economic golden age that we had seen during the Viking Age. In the 10th century, Ireland has an economic golden age. So I think that comes to an end again when the O'Donnells are beaten. But I'd have to look more into it, to be honest with you. Hugh Maguire, during the 9 Years' War, was the commander in the Battle of the Yellow Ford, winning a massive victory. He was, so I do, as you're saying there, like local politics wise, I fully agree with you. Like the Maguires 100% would have played off the O'Donnells and the O'Neills. But when it came up to the bigger picture, I do reckon Maguire going into the likes of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, or even going back again to the 100 Years' War. I think he was an Ulster man and proud. He was on Team Ulster, and that's that. Because especially when this is an era, the 100 Years' War and the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, we're definitely in an era where you start to get that foundation of Irish nationalism in a way, but not quite until we get to the Cromwellian Wars. Then we get way more of an Irish nationalist identity, I suppose. Philip Maguire must be someone I'm named after. Resigned in 1360. So that's just before we get into the peak of the Gaelic resurgence with Arthur MacMurrough. What a time to be alive, really. He defeated the O'Neills and the O'Donnells, MacMahon and the O'Connors, all major players in Irish politics. That one's fascinating, all right. I think it was the O'Neills in that period. It was still the O'Neills were still the major players in Ulster at that time, because some of the biggest battles around 1360 to 1390 during the 100 Years' War, when Ireland became the main fixture of the English under Richard II, you start to see huge sieges happening at Carrickfergus as the O'Neills and the Scottish MacDonalds were sieging Carrickfergus on and off, constantly harassing the area around Carrickfergus, and eventually just taking Carrickfergus. I think they just take it the once. I can't remember if they take it once or twice, but they do eventually take Carrickfergus. Perhaps they had to take it twice, because I think the first time around they just sack Carrickfergus. I don't think they actually occupy Carrickfergus. I think what eventually happens is they just take the Black Rent from Carrickfergus Castle. And every once in a while what happens is that you have an English military force from Dublin that pushes up into Carrickfergus to recapture it. Carrickfergus Castle is very, very important to the Scottish, English, and Irish because of the fact that it controls the. If you control Carrickfergus, you're able to send out boats, and then from Carrickfergus commit piracy on the movement of boats going from Scotland to Ireland. The Scottish and the Irish want to continue the movement of mercenaries and trade, and also weapons going between Ireland and Scotland during the 100 Years' War, not just with Scottish military force and aid going from Scotland to Ireland, but also from Ireland to Scotland when you had a large military force from England going up um, into Scotland. So anytime you'd have a large, during the 100 Years' War, anytime you had a large military force moving from England up to Scotland, the O'Neills in particular had to raise a military force and quickly move them over to Scotland to aid the Bruces. And where else are we going with this one? And vice versa. When you had English military forces from Dublin moving over to Carrickfergus and then harassing the O'Neills or even expanding into O'Neill territories, the Bruces needed to get some kind of clan, in particular the MacDonalds. The MacDonalds were very, very quick to move in and aid the O'Neills during the 100 Years' War in Ireland. Fascinating time for sure. Bam, bam, bam. Some methods have been developed to receive data from burnt records. Not sure what scraps are saved in Ireland, but it would be awesome to see. I seen that as well. They're using AI in a positive means this time. Well, hopefully. It's a bit funny with politics in the background and stuff because of people stealing data and stuff. But on a positive light, they have been able to use AI to quickly put together burned documentation just with a little hint and indication. AI is able to read damaged information way easier than human eyes can. So it's kind of given us an advantage when it comes down to restoring a lot of the damaged literature and stuff. Like AI can work with, the smallest bit of, a little bit of curves of an A or something. So the rest of an A, for example, could be damaged. But if you give it a wee bit of a curve, a regular human being would look at it and say, is that a C? Is that an A? Is that a D? AI, on the other hand, can solidly get a better idea of, if it's an A or not or whatever. So AI is being used to quickly restore a lot of the damaged literature. So yeah, hopefully we can get some really, really positive feedback from AI for a change. I know it's starting to rack up everything, especially on YouTube and stuff, all these fake YouTube videos that give out just the worst information ever. That's pretty based. Stupid boats. You're an English supporter, or are you against the old English piracy, wrecking up our boats on our side of the field? My grandfather, my grandfather would fish during the famine and feed people on the mainland. I heard about that. A few fishermen were able to get out there. The only problem is if people were caught fishing during the famine, they were shot by the British. Think about that. Fishing in their own lands, shot by the British because the British claimed they owned the fish of Ireland. So, and I have heard of that. It was who was it? Finn Dwyer recently talked about that. Fishermen trying their best to get out there and capture some fish, but yeah, if the British had caught them, they would shoot them. Plus, the biggest problem is a lot of the fishermen were starting to get very poor because the British were taking everything. The fishermen were becoming more and more poor, so they weren't able to maintain a lot of their fishing kit. And they were aware of this. So a lot of them ended up selling their fishing kit and stuff for food for their family, Depressing stuff, Um, So yeah, the whole argument, I could literally give out and whinge about it all day, and I don't want to spend all day talking about the famine because it's depressing enough, My own family survived the famine by eating grass. My grandmother told me that they would have to do stuff like make nettle stew if they could, but it was I think it's my great, so it would be my great 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 grandmother, I think, during the famine, she found her brother dead with grass around his mouth, like he died from eating too much grass, and they were eating grass to survive, to get by, because all their food had been taken, And my grandmother was telling me that it was a treat to get nettle stew because of what the British had done, And she was telling me this as a kid next to Cromwell. She was the bitch about Cromwell like there was no tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff historians are saying lately, and if my grandmother ever heard them, Jesus, she would be upset. She truly despised Cromwell. My whole family, Margaret Thatcher, because my family, my grandfather on my mother's side had to immigrate over to Manchester in 1960 because there was no work in Sligo. So they immigrated to Manchester to go working. And just as my grandfather, he overworked himself. He was working as a builder during the day. And then at 3 a.m. in the morning, he would go out to do the bins. He was also a drinker as well, because that was the part of the, Irish culture in Manchester at the time. So he used to stay up late drinking and talking to friends. So he was putting too much pressure on his heart. And he ended up having a heart attack at only the age of 40, which for me is terrifying because I'm 36 now, And he had a heart attack at age 40 because he overworked himself. Plus, he had a very fatty diet as well. He was eating a lot of pork. He made a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. He was very poor when he was in Sligo. And the moment he got to Manchester, work. Never said no to work. But that eventually led to him just getting a heart attack at age 40. Absolutely devastating stuff. So it left my grandmother by herself. And living in Manchester was about to get very, very difficult for my poor grandmother because the Troubles had just kicked off in Northern Ireland. So suddenly the Irish were being persecuted in, in England at the time. And it led to my mother and grandmother living a very difficult life in England. The slurs and stuff and what happened to my grandmother, Jesus, you wouldn't want to wish on anyone, to be quite honest with you. Very, very difficult time. So eventually my poor grandmother was bullied out of Manchester, which is depressing because she was getting a lot of work in Manchester. That's why she was very defensive of going. But because of Margaret Thatcher and her bringing in her taxes and people singling out my grandmother because of what was happening in Northern Ireland, she was eventually just bullied out of it and had to go back she ended up immigrating over to Cork just as my mother was going into her teens. And she ended up living with one of her daughters there. So they got to a certain level. So yeah, funny time for sure. And of course, then they had me, didn't they? And she filled my head with a whole load of history. Ooh, let me catch up with the comments. Saffron was very expensive at the time. I want to cover that one. It was. Let me pop over because it's very funny because when we talk about the kern, saffron, we always just assume that they are poor raiders. They're very poor and stuff. I want to try to get one that's actually quite dear. The problem is that the kerns are always taken from a Tudor perspective. So they're always seen as very poor. But actually, if you look at their clothing, it is very, very expensive. There's two images of a kern. I just want to look at. Is that the only one I have? I suppose this one's much better. Pop over. I'll chuck that in there. All right. Boom. Hopefully that pops up right away. There we go. So this is your standard kern. But even if you look at that from the get-go and you see the saffron yellow there, you also see all of his proper coat that's proper embroidered and stuff. That much saffron from Iberian Spain, so expensive. And the way he's wearing his clothes, very loosely fitted, which shows that he doesn't mind throwing clothing away, He doesn't mind spending extra, which goes to show that he's a certain level of wealth, It's funny, because everyone else at the time is making clothing as tight as possible so they're not wasting clothing. But yet this cattle raider is showing that he's an elite cattle raider. He's not a poor, young, ugluk cattle raider that's barely just getting by between the age of 14 to 25. No. He is a veteran cattle raider. He is a kern, and he's very much showing that off here with his wealth, Bum, bum, bum. And then there's this other photo I want to show you. It's a English kern, surprisingly. He ends up taking command of a group of kerns. It's very funny. The English in Ireland have this very strange obsession with the kerns, where they role play and dress up as kerns. It's interesting. I suppose they just fall into the romance of cattle raiding culture because it very much is I am the man with the biggest stick, Best game to play as a man. You're full of testosterone, you want to show off your masculinity. This guy, for example, everybody loves about him. So the last one they were showing off, there's like with the English, they put on, can I chuck that up there? No, we're not getting that. Okay, how about I chuck this here? There we go. I can. Okay, so if we look at his legs there, you can see his big, strong legs. And that's a part of the style at the time. Everyone wants to show off their natural calf legs. And the English do it by having clothing and stuff to tighten the fat around the leg itself to make the calf look bigger than what it was. But the Irish should just naturally show off their legs. And you can see that again in this drawing as well, where he's naturally showing off his legs and how well defined his legs are as part of the culture at the time. Absolutely. Because like that's his tunic, by the way. He's not wearing a miniskirt. That's just his tunic. But he's trying to show off as much leg as possible because that's what it was to be a man at the time. Have big, strong, thick legs to show off to the wife. You'd prance around the house or your castle showing off your legs to your wife. She'd love it as well. Like 100-year war. That means children were born into war. Wow. Yeah, they were. Trying to think what else is. And it really shows as well, when anytime you look at depictions of the 100 Years' War, you can see how gritty everybody looks like, that never ending. It's the same kind of grittiness that you can see in the Ukrainian soldiers now. If you look at Ukrainian soldiers, you can see that same endless gritty, that there is no hope in life kind of look. And you can imagine that's how, because you can feel it in the literature at the time, the whole never-ending war. And that's the magic of Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc appears, and she quite literally is the promised chosen one. And the moment she appears, there's this big light of sun that comes on the battlefield. When the French are at their lowest, Joan of Arc appears like a light in the complete darkness of the 100 Years' War. And, because of her inspiration, the French eventually, give birth to their nationalism and are able to eventually completely smash the Burgundy and Portugal and the English, The true land of Ireland is the San John Islands, just off the Pacific coast of Washington, aka Pacific Coast in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, I suppose it is. What else do we have? Absolutely love Irish history from 1450 to the 1400s. So do I. Absolutely the best of times. The medieval period cannot be beaten, in my opinion. Such an interesting time where you see so much massive change going from Bronze Age Ireland. Then there's this slight kind of dip going into Iron Age Ireland, where you kind of got that Celtic culture and stuff. And then suddenly 410 pops up, and that classic kind of St. Patrick culture comes into Ireland with the, how they call it, the academics refer to it as the Hiberno-Roman culture that comes into Ireland with St. Patrick. Of course, they weren't dressing as Romans, but you can kind of see that culture coming in with St. Patrick in around 410 to 436. And now they're finding endless amount of Hiberno-Roman finds in Ireland, which is so exciting, Because for a long time, they didn't, like, it's so strange. People didn't want to identify as Hiberno-Roman, that kind of, what was it, the kind of St. Patrick vibe that was coming in. People wanted it to be Iron Age, Celtic, Latin culture, the classic Celtic tartan with the moustaches and headhunting culture. It's kind of what people wanted to advertise for so long. But it's exciting now that we get to start looking more into the development of Christianization in Ireland with the Hiberno-Roman culture coming in with St. Patrick. Exciting times, like. I guess landlords also owned fishing rights. Go figure. Yes, the British, huh? Literally bitch about it all day. It's sad to think that the Irish clan that lived on their ancestor lands for centuries were branded as criminals for farming the very land that their ancestors. Imagine, imagine. And people wonder why some Irish Americans are still scaving today, losing their land in Ireland, you know? And then seeing what's happening politically right now. I'm not going to talk about it whatsoever because we'd get into trouble. But to be honest with you, anytime I see an Irish American getting a bit tick about it, I understand where they're coming from. I know most Irish people wouldn't understand because a lot of Irish people don't study the relationship going from the Jacobite and Williamite wars, the clan warfare of that era, and then going to the immigration from Ireland over to Canada, America, Australia, that the Irish went through. You know, a lot of Irish people today are somewhat disconnected to a lot of that history. I know a lot of people are getting more and more educated on that, and they need to get more educated about that. But reading the literature, I understand why Irish Americans are annoyed right now, especially what's happening in the bigger scale. You know, Ireland should be, especially with a lot of these companies going into Ireland, be going into another economic golden age, and yet it feels like, you know, Ireland is being exploited, and with the housing crisis, like I'm in Japan. Why the hell am I in Japan? Ireland is supposed to be in an economic golden age. What the hell am I doing over here? Do you know? I don't. I have no clue what's going on. But I need to stop before we all get into trouble. And these were Air Jordans of the day. Goddamn right. Doesn't like man. I'd want to go up again. I'm just scanning through there, guys. I'm going to use yellow tunic for my reenactment. Are you sure you don't want to wear this one for reenactment? That reminds me. I was just talking to the last O'Sullivan. I was just talking to him there on Instagram. I'm trying to convince him to come on to the live stream. What was it called? Pop into this one. Which one's better? Yeah. I'm trying to right now talk to him to go on to the live stream. Not next week, but probably the week after that one. If I can get him on, that'd be absolutely amazing to get him on there to talk more about Munster, Ireland. We'll have to give after that. We'll have to give Michal some loving because Michal specializes on Ulster, Ireland. So his specialization is up there, and we hardly give him any love these days. We've been talking so much about Munster, but we will get around to that. Bum bum bum. I just pushed that there for a second there. Caveman. Suggestions for you, since you're all looking into troops, have a look at wargaming miniatures for sure, big time. I'm addicted to the miniatures of the Wars of the Roses, to be quite honest with you, especially the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. And the miniatures to do with that are absolutely magnificent. And I really hope they continue bringing out more to that. Another book I would definitely look at as well is Of Kearns and Gallowglass, from Retinue to Regiment. Wow, that book is absolutely magnificent. I'll chuck it on there, actually. Give us a second there. I'll come back. Of Kearns and Gallowglass. I have the book straight away. There's a few other ones. One was it 16th century Irish armies as well. Another book I have to get a hold of. I need to start making more money. I need to get the subscription up there so we can still. Do you know what? I put it in there of Kearns and Gallowglass, and there was a miniature set. I'll chuck up the miniature set there, which is actually inspired. Do you know what? I'll chuck in first. I'll put in that one. Give us a second there. Bum, 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 bum. There's the book anyway. Here. That's the book there I'm talking about. See if we can get that one in there. Yeah, Of Kearns and Gallowglass. That's the book to get. I still need to get a hardback copy. I've been taking notes out of Michal's. Michal's got the rare collector's edition of that book. I have to get any old edition of that book, but Michal's got the rare collector's edition of Kearns and Gallowglass. But that's definitely a one to get for sure. What else do I need to chuck in there? And there's the miniatures that were inspired by of Kearns and Gallowglass, the book. So they went off and made miniatures for the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. Oof, absolutely love it. I do. My heart skips a beat for that kind of stuff, to be quite honest with you. And what else do we do? The reason Kearns didn't wear footwear was because it was useless in boggy terrain. There was armor styles that used, yeah, facts. These are solid facts, caveman. Do you know? I did living history for a good few years, and not only that, but God, it is so before 1920 with the rubber soles, it is so slippery. Do you know? Jim O'Neill. I also read somewhere where Ireland was founded by criminals because Ireland was. Are you sure you're not mixing up Australia? Do you know? Da, 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 da. I'll just pop that in there. Do, do, do. That's the terrible one. Is this one better? There we go. I'm just having a quick drink for myself before I end up collapsing. Give us a second there, lads. Because I haven't had a drink in about 4 hours. Whoops. Give us a second there, lads. Du, du, du. Ugh. All right. Okay, where are we? Bum, 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 bum. Right, I need to not die. Bum, 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 bum. Where's my bloody game? There we go. Oh shit, that's the wrong button. There. Right. Right, we need to go in and talk to this fella here. I'm getting a little drink there before I talk to you lads again. Oopsies. Irish hobblers were famed in France during the 100 Years' War. They were absolutely amazing at skirmish warfare. And Irish have kept up with warfare through the centuries. We lost the 9 Years' War because of the Spanish. It's a complicated one, isn't it? It's definitely a field for Dr. Owen O'Neill. We'll have to prod him one day. Why did the Irish lose the Spanish? Was it the fault of the Spanish? God, seriously, no one. I just poured my Martin. No, I'm not pretty sure it read Ireland. My books were a box up and another room, but I'm pretty sure it read. I'm sure, Jim, you're purposely mixing up Ireland and Australia. It surely couldn't be Ireland for sure. I'll go for assistant. Being born and raised in America, I learned nothing of Irish history in school. I heard it all from my mom and dad. They were very talked about. I think that's most Irish Americans keep their culture alive is through their parents. It's scary to know that if you don't pass it on to the next generation, it'll just disappear. Like, and there's that could just disappear if that communication suddenly stopped in America. It's wild. Surnames and everything. There's surnames that only exist in America but do not exist in Ireland. Wild and very depressing at the same time. That somewhere in America, even right now, there could be a son all by himself, completely cut off from his lineage. They could pass away, and that would be it. That would be the end of that whole entire clan. Like, well, the history of that clan. Yeah, I seen that as well. They're still have their titles and stuff today in both Africa and in Spain. The likes of various O'Neill branches and what's yeah, we got the O'Neills and the O'Donnells and the O'Sullivans as well, isn't there? Um, oh, that's nice to hear, Connor. Thanks for that. Consider it done. Bum, bum, bum. Do go for that one. Also, MacMahon, the kings of Ashuga. After the flight of Earls became French Duke. I didn't know that one actually. The MacMahons. President in 1870. That's brilliant stuff, isn't it? I do know about the MacMahons in America. Many of the MacMahons became very, very successful there. Yeah, it can be heartbreaking listening to people who are descendants from the Red Legs. And yeah, it's wild, absolutely wild. More of DNA that could be easily lost over the years. Like, I have a huge family, but stand along my PT saying damaged our relationship. Um, don't even know where the hell I'm going. Right, let's go off and talk to these men. Boom, bum, 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 bum. 1 second, maybe I should actually look at the map. Actually, your man's just there anyway. It's the first fellow, isn't it? And then let's return, isn't it? All right. Roger that. And I had if you ever come across German or French people with von or d in their surname, it means they're descendants of nobles. That's fascinating, isn't it? I have to keep a note of that now, especially since I'm mad into medieval history on the continent as well. The boy's trying to find the source of the illness. That's a pint of water in Japan. Just curious because the water here is piss. It used to be very, very good in Japan, but it's recently that the water has started to become contaminated by plastics and also other chemicals that has made its way into the water. Although there's a lot of denial politically going on in the hierarchies. So, yeah, I think water over there is going to piss in the West. Better off, converting to Islam and just moving off to the Middle East. Get yourself 9 wives. I don't know why we all resist this. We need to just move off to the desert already. Live a more natural life with 9 women. Well, we have to just accept God in a different way, I guess. I see. All the Irish are descendants of one king or another, and a bit of a topic I plan on backpacking Japan next year. Where would I recommend? Ooh, so many places really. I would definitely start off in. Ooh. Well, you be. I'm assuming you want to go from Tokyo to Osaka and Kyoto and stuff, isn't it? That's where main people mostly go from. Or are you gonna? I suppose you can't really start from the north to make your way down because of the bear attacks. Unless you don't mind bear attacks. Hmm. Well, the old Irish kings had a few marriages, all right. Like, I don't think as he said himself, like as long as you give them all a bit of pocket money, they should be all grand. But then it's very difficult for a man to make a wage these days with the government not sure what it's bloody doing. Doesn't know if it's coming or going. I tell you, we need to blame the government for everything. It's flowers, isn't it? Where's the old journey button? We have an old Gawk G. What's the second there actually? My surname is anglicized or oversimplified family history. My mother's side is Irish. My father's side, his surname is King. Ah, that's interesting. And what part of Ireland did they originate from? Just out of curiosity. Gonna die of boredom. Whoa. The government is over governed, just my opinion. Oh, I think that's their opinion as well. We're doing too much work. We want to sit on our bum all day. Leave us alone. Ulster. Ah, so you've been in Mihal's realm. Mihal from Clans and Dynasties. Have you said it to Mihal? Yeah, pray to God there. Pray to God because you're not pregnant. Ha 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 ha. Dum dum dum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Jesus. Jesus. Yeah, I was just thinking that same thing, Jim O'Neill. Oh, right. No, my Japanese is absolutely horrendous. Bum bum bum. Somebody being fancy in the old comment section. All right. No, my language. I'm terrible at languages. But lucky my wife is Japanese, so she does most of the translating for me. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Uh, I wish they had accurate map of England's control of Ireland, especially during Henry VIII's reign. Always shows the whole island under his. Oh, stop, caveman! Jesus, it always just anytime people do depictions of Ireland, it just drives me up the wall, man. People have the most crazed interpretations of Ireland. Dum, dum, dum. I can get most of these places myself. No, is it a case that I'm sneaking? All right. Funny how I just walked in here and just started stealing the place. How did you get all this stuff? Well, it's mine now. How dare a monk, huh? Have anything, huh? The monk has it, it's mine. Right, where do we need to go next? I know of a few Irish words and a few Latin words I picked up from my mother and father. Geez, your mom and dad were proper switched on. What Irish were they speaking? Munster Irish, Ulster Irish, or the old Leinster Irish? Thank you, sir. We'll open up this door now. Pop over here. I pop over the wall there and I say hello. Stairs to the cellar. Dugwit is Irish for hello, pronounced Dugwit. What do you think of Ireland being? Oh my God, I don't know, boy. What do you mean by that? I'd have to elaborate still further. I don't even know where I'm going. Where's my fancy stick? Buff torch. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum. Look up these stairs now. All right, this is where we do boarding. One second, I won't have a gawk as I shove a torch into people's faces. I recommend Irish with Melly. She is a great teacher and has really good and easy to flow lessons. If you're interested, I'll chuck that in there for anyone who's watching the recording later on, because I'm sure she probably is amazing. Dugwit is Irish for hello, goodbye, isn't it? I've never said Dugwit for hello. Oh, sorry, not hello, goodbye. Slán Gwalia is what I always say. It is 10 to 12. So I've got about 10 minutes, and then I have to go off and work on class for next Sunday. So you guys are you're going to go onto my Patreon and pay the 20 quid, and you guys are going to go to my class on Sunday, where we're going to be covering King John in Ireland. Ah, nah, I wouldn't be into any of that Athens stuff. Where did he work? Ah, that's interesting. That would be more Bronze Age Ireland. If you go to most the Irish Museum, Irish National Museum, the very first thing you come into the center of it, Jesus, are you bombarded with Bronze Age stuff? Ireland went into a golden age during the Bronze Age. You know, one of the greatest golden ages that we had is actually during the Bronze Age. That's why it's very difficult to, unless you're going to outright dismiss it because you haven't looked at the information. It's also very difficult to say the Irish weren't the sea people because they had an, oh man, just an insane empire during the Bronze Age, and yet so many people scoff at Bronze Age Ireland until they look at the evidence of Bronze Age Ireland, and then it's like, holy shit, like this thing was insane during the Bronze Age. They had an overking at the time, the Milesians, who were allegedly, according to legend, they were kind of Greek Iberian dynasty that ruled Ireland at the time. The Milesians, they were called. And then you had obviously the Book of Invasions as well, which is written at the time, which explains about the Irish coming from Egypt over to the Iberian Peninsula and then from the Iberian Peninsula over to Ireland, which has been proven to be true. What's going on here? Oh. If I jump up. I suppose I'm supposed to go after the cat, am I? It's funny that being there. Bronze Age Ireland had they got. Ah. Oh, nice. Bam, bam, bam. Boom, boom, boom. Go on inside there. Give us a second there. I'll pop outside. Bum, bum, bum. And then. One second, one second, one second. Oh, right. If I stay inside there, 1 second. Is that this one? I just want to quickly read this. You guys are slightly behind there. It's funny how slow this can be at sometimes, but if I refresh it, it just pops into where it should be. And is it crowded in Japan? It can be, yeah, especially with the amount of foreigners coming over. But recently, the Japanese government have gotten kind of sick of the foreigners. Nothing.
It's almost empty.
Much fun with the women.
What was Yaroslav working on all those days?
Um,
Show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb.
I don't know what happened there. 100 Irish, 100 Japanese. Who wins? Oh, Jesus Christ. Where are we? Where's this battle going to take place? Ireland or Japan? I don't know too much on their design. Poland had larger. Okay. Is that during the Bronze Age as well? The one in the dugouts. Right inside here. Where are we? What are we on? I'll finish off this and then I'll get to work with the class on Sunday, which you guys should be attending, which is going to be on Patreon. So if you go onto my Irish Medieval class, what was it, page, and then click on my Patreon, you can go over to the classes. So today, when I finish this live stream, which is about 3 minutes or so, you'll be heading on over and signing up for my classes, which will be covering King John coming to Ireland. Well, at least the background towards it. Well, we won't be covering King John for some time. Actually, I need to go slightly back. That's a gorgeous shield. Mark of the Order. What's his kit like? It's awesome. Love it. 900 to 1000 CE. Right, there's something in here, or is it upstairs? I didn't trigger anything, so. Mesolithic 2, Iron Age. My wife would be specializing in all that stuff. It's more my wife's field of expertise. Then mine. Alright, so there's meant to be something in here, I'm assuming. Unless there's an upstairs. What does it want me to do in here? Give us a second. Check his belongings. I must be upstairs. Because there's no belongings here. I just want to finish up that bit. I can plan return. Yeah, I'd love to get up. I'm literally over in Okinawa right now, and I do need to go to the Philippines just for an old gawk. Oh yeah, his belongings are definitely around here. Yeah, let's go one of these rooms. It's handy when they've got private rooms of their own. Close that so we're not disturbed. Oh, where is he? Drop him what we want. It's mine now. Okay. We'll close this door so we're not disturbed. Right. Oh, we got one of these tests. Give us a second there. Hopefully I'm not disturbed while I do this. Oh, got it.
Plans at the cellars.
Right, what time are we on now? Okay, that's grand. Plan on buying land and building a large house after we hire an architect. That's a good idea in the Philippines, especially since it's so difficult to buy land in the West. Too much of a high demand. But hopefully, eventually, I'll get a wee bit of land. Bum. Careful. Pray to God. What are we looking at? Give us a second. Am I talking to someone? Oh, speak. Do we talk to a particular monk? Rob him? Oh, there he is. Go disturb the monks.
The angel of the Lord declared unto me, conceived of the Holy Spirit. What do you know about Brother Yaroslav? The librarian said you knew him better than anyone.
That's right. We joined the monastery at the same time and just got on somehow.
How does Yaroslav spend his time?
You can hear the alarm in the background.
Why are you?
I have to get back to work.
Master Albert
No.
up to it. He's treating him now. He said it might help if we knew more about Yaroslav.
I see.
Right. He's not doing well.
How is he? Is the treatment working?
It's not looking good so far. He's still delirious. Barely reacts even when someone speaks to him.
God have mercy.
If you tell me what you know about him, it might help him.
What did you want to know?
How does Yaroslav spend his time?
Same as all of us. Work, prayer, studying the scriptures, and sleep. Yaroslav is completely immersed in his books. He's currently translating a new one from Italian. It's called the Decameron. He often stays in the scriptorum late into the night because of it. Shows up for morning prayers with his hands, sometimes
I haven't started praying yet.
stained with ink.
Really? Crispin told me how hard-working Yaroslav is, but he's barely translated anything from his latest book.
What makes you say that?
Simple. The book is still lying in the
Uh-huh.
scriptorium, and when I opened it, it was practically empty. That's
I can't believe they
must be a
use
mistake.
explosives
Will
on
you
Tara.
believe me? I do
Oh, it's that kind of stuff that drives you up the wall.
And slandering Yaroslav left and right.
The mad stuff
That's
they used to
really not my
use,
aim.
well, do and still do, is
But
absolutely
I think I might be
wild at
onto
times.
something.
Like,
I just don't yet know what. And if you won't tell me anything, I'll probably have to ask the librarian again.
Wait, don't say anything to Crispin.
Oh? And why not?
Because he simply wouldn't understand. Oh dear. Promise you really won't tell anyone.
Okay.
Word of honor. Now talk.
All right. I just hope Yaroslav forgives me. One night, he accidentally woke me. The door to his cell creaks horribly. I already suspected his translation was taking oddly long, so I followed him that night. At first, it looked like he was heading to the scriptorium, but after he went down the stairs, he turned right and went down into the cellars. But when I went in after him, I couldn't see him anymore. I lost him in the dark.
And you've no idea where he might have gone?
Not a clue. As
Boom, boom, boom.
far as I know, it's just barrels of wine down there. And empty wine.
Why didn't you want to tell me?
Because I just don't want Yaroslav to get expelled from the
I was thinking that.
Just for going to the cellar? That doesn't mean anything.
What if he was meeting someone down there? Someone no one's supposed to see him with.
I was thinking that.
Well,
Maybe I'm just a
I
pervert.
once saw him standing in the monastery doorway with some wench, and they looked like they were having a grand old chat.
And where exactly did you lose him? In the cellars?
In the corridor leading to the scriptorium, at the passage to the stairs to the lower level.
There's just one more thing I'd like to know. Has Yaroslav spoken to Brother Steve
Isn't that a fact?
recently? About confession? Maybe?
I don't think so. Yaroslav doesn't neglect prayer or fasting, but he only rarely resorts to confession.
So you mean he sins, but avoids confessing it?
He hardly sees anything as sin. How can I put it? He chose a life of asceticism, but
Just 1 second there, lads.
he once said, "Why would God create the world if he didn't want man to discover it?"
There, that's perfect.
The wench you saw Yaroslav with?
I remember seeing part of the customer records where,
Because she's now in the infirmary with that same...
yeah, the forecourts, but it's in
Some
Trinity
names from
College now.
Yaroslav. I
The
don't
old,
know any of them.
oh my god, what am I doing? Click, click, click.
That's enough for now.
And what else do I need to do? Boom, 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 boom.
For the beauty of your creation and your care for us. Amen.
I'm sorry.
What do you mean recluses in the Middle Ages in Ireland? Anyway, regardless, that's me for today. I'll be back on tomorrow around the same time to do more Kingdom Come Deliverance. What else do I need to blastering do? They recently recovered over 3,000 digital. Yeah, I've seen that as well with the help of AI and stuff. So hopefully everything will get much more exciting in the future. What else do I need to do? Okay, so I'll be back on again tomorrow, lads. And also on top of that as well, what else does Philip need to do? Philip's going to have Patreon on Sunday. I'm doing my classes over on Patreon. So if you want to get involved with all those classes and stuff, definitely head over to my Patreon and sign up there. But 20 quid a month, not too bad for classes specializing in Irish medieval history. Other than that, lads, I think that's it. And next week we will have next Wednesday night, it'll be myself, Dr. Owen O'Neill, and Mihal from Clans and Dynasties talking about the Gaelic clans in Munster. So that's on in the late medieval period. So that is next Wednesday. For now, I'm going to go off and put together a PowerPoint slide and stuff for a good chunk of it anyway for Sunday. So definitely head on over there, and I'll see you then. Loners, man, who stand alone by themselves. All right. I suppose it's a good for you anyway. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow, Jim O'Neill, if you're back on again tomorrow. Well, lads, I'll see you later, and